Hello there, everyone, and welcome to Empowering Voices. In this podcast, we will be sharing the most unique stories from authors, entrepreneurs, and changemakers. I'm your host, Melissa Guccione. I am an author, a client, and an official associate with Book Writing Venture. And if our viewers would take just a minute to hit those like buttons and subscribe to our channel, that would be wonderful. We appreciate that very much. So now let's get to the important stuff. Today, I'm so excited to introduce a very special guest, Rusty Bresse. Now, do I have that right?
Bresse.
Bresse is the one.
Yeah.
All right. We want to get it right for sure. Rusty Bresse. Thank you for being here so much, Rusty. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for giving me this time. Thanks, Melissa.
You got it, hon. I'm going to just share just a touch about your background, just a little. I know you're an educated man from Georgia. You're a director and CEO of ScoreNavigator Inc. and Credlogix Inc. and the creator of the point deduction technology, which we'll get into in just a little bit. You're a dedicated husband, a father of 6, a grandfather of 6, and soon to be a best-selling author with your first book, Faith, Family, and Finance. Faith, Family, and Finance is an inspiring and practical guide to achieving financial stability, success through the lens of faith and family values. So that is a fabulous, fabulous thing to be writing about. And let's talk about your book first. There's a lot of things to talk about as I looked over your information, Rusty. And I do want to thank you for bringing your passion to our audience today. And so let's talk about faith, family, and finance. What was your inspiration for writing this book?
I've been in the credit industry for 43 years now. And 3 years ago, I got sick. My family got sick. And while in the hospital, on the 4th day, the doctor came in with 2 nurses and told me I had a 0% chance to make it through the night. I had to make choices. And then when I made the right choice, which was to give it all to God and not go by their choice, I'm still here today. So when I got out of the hospital and started to recover, people had been asking me to write certain things. A lot of times they want you to just write about yourself, and I'm not that interesting. And so I thought about it, and then Book Writing Ventures popped up. And then I reached out, and they helped me motivate to put something together.
Wow.
Their encouragement was very important, and where people probably rushed, Melissa, to put something together, they were very patient with me because I was fighting it the whole time. I'm like, it's just not that interesting. I'm not an interesting person. And so I don't need to put a book out there, who cares? And, but they kept on, very persistent to help me out.
That kind of support. I feel like, the timing, first of all, when you turned everything over and you opened your heart to God to get a bigger picture of what maybe your life could be. And that opened some doorways, it sounds like, for a connection. And then you said you came across Book Writing Venture and gave you the support that you needed. That I know a lot of authors have a hard time working through their stuff all by themselves. And like you said, to have the guidance, the encouragement, and the support that, yes, you are valuable, you are worthy, and you are interesting. You personally. So
well, I appreciate that. It was a long recovery. I had lost my dad and my sister back to back 3 weeks after we'd all gone into the hospital. One passed one day, one passed the other. They both lived with me and my family, and I was my first time to be able to get out of the house on oxygen to bury them one day after the other. And so besides the physicality, the mental wasn't really quite there to get into anything at the time. And that's where the book came into play, and the push from the group that I was working with. Like I apologize for not remembering the young lady's name that stayed with it with me. Um, and then the team that they had that stayed with me and
Yeah.
didn't scream at me, when are you going to do this? When are you going to do this? Don't quit, do it. It's going to serve a purpose. And I'm like, okay, let's do it.
You
So
had that, you had the team, the coach, you were like, all right, this is teamwork.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And so, for anybody that's out there that's looking to put their thoughts into something, you got to have a team like that, not somebody who's just, let's just keep throwing books out there. There's, thousands and thousands of books. And whether one person reads it or they, or a bunch of people, I felt if one person read it and they got something from it, then they would know that it wasn't me, it was something that God inspired to put in to tell people no matter what you do, put him first.
Hmm.
Before you make these decisions, put him first. And he knows what we want or need. And we need to reflect on ourselves and look in the mirror and decide what's really important. And so my goal with the book was to teach people when enough is enough. And what's more important is to sit at the dinner table with your children and find out what's going on in their lives
Yes.
instead of worrying to get a nicer car than your cousin.
Yes, in our society, we are definitely, bombarded with a particular lifestyle, way too busy, way too much distraction. And so to find first that inner motivation and then to take the steps that you did to, believe the truth of love and God first. Um, it's
Well,
hard because we've been programmed, to think otherwise. So to keep
we don't know
focused.
what happiness is, and so we all want happiness.
Yeah.
When Adam and Eve were put here, they had everything, and God, we're in God's image. He was wanted to be. He's happy. He wanted
Yes.
us to be happy, and then they bought into the lie that they had to have more and know more than what they were really getting that God provides. And that has escalated over the years. And we're all guilty about it. We're like, okay, I'm not happy. Let me go get this today. I'm not real happy. Let me get some chocolate cake today. Whatever we have to do for the moment, but it goes away. It's gone. And then we keep searching for more happiness instead of just relying on the Lord and saying, how can I be more of a steward and talk to people and help people instead of trying to take them down? How do you help your neighbor? How do you lift them up instead of trying to outdo them?
Wow.
And I try to
Yes.
cover some of that in the book, on everybody's journey. You have your own journey, and figure out what's going to make you happy.
It is. And that I had a question about what your core message that you'd like your readers to take away. And it sounded like you covered part of that right there. Do you want to expand on that at all? Or
Well,
so?
I can expand on it. Or we can move a little bit, Melissa, on the hardships that it takes dealing with credit and
Oh,
finance.
yeah.
Because you go online, there's so many variables, and everybody out there is a credit expert. Everybody knows everything. There's so many different variables that work with on what a person has to do to even get financing. And when you go into financing, the Bible says you become a debt. You're you're beholden to somebody. You don't own anything. You don't own that car unless you pay cash for it. You don't own that house unless you pay cash for it. And then you have to go through this. But the way the industry is set up, and I'm very involved in the credit industry. That's what my business does. That's what I do every day still, is to go out and purchase a home. You have to be really prepared. You can't go in not knowing and then expect the lenders or the credit reporting agencies or a company like me who analyzes that credit data to tell you what you have to do when that's about too late, because that's where it costs you a lot more money. So you've got to search and find out what the real rules are. You got to know what you have to do, and then you have to see how important it is and what is your motivation. On the same sense, the lenders, the people that you're entrusting, need to listen to why you want to get a loan, why you want to move, what's going on with you in your life. And so you don't become just something on paper, you become a human being. And if we treat people like human beings, and the Lord said, love thy neighbor, that's what you're supposed to do. And so you may have to make some sacrifices and let somebody get away with something a little bit on paying in order to be able to get their credit and their finances in the right position to get the best rate, so they can hold on to their home instead of just getting
Yes.
financed and not having the right mentality. You're going to get in trouble. And you can't you can't set people up like that. I don't think that's the way to do business.
I've noticed a difference from when, applying for loan or credit, say 30 years ago, somewhere up through the 90s, still, and then back, still a little bit more people oriented. If you knew your bankers or you were a small business in a town and they knew you, there was still some actual, face to face and consideration for, who you were as an individual person. And these last few years, especially after COVID, well, it was 2001, really, as we know, the world changed. And then, 20 years later, we had a big change again in 2020. Went into the bank for some hard times and stuff. And there was just, first of all, the not the tellers, but the loan people. I swear to God, they were 22. I'm pretty sure. It was like,
Yeah.
I just went, oh, you're the loan person. Okay, well, let's go ahead. And then it was just, they just read off a script. And there was no, and I'm in a small town. I have a local business. My husband's had a business for over 35 years here. And there was absolutely no consideration there, for any of that. Just went off the script from their computer. And, so it wasn't a very
It's
good
not
feeling.
personable.
Just
Yeah.
not just
No,
to
it's
have
not
that.
like, yeah. I remember I got referred from a lender on a gentleman who was looking to get a loan for $25,000 off his home
Mhm.
to get a second.
Sure.
And he lived in a manufactured home, and he owed 75,000. He wanted to get 100,000. And I had experience in the manufactured home business. So, they said, well, Ty, Rusty in with the credit with this. Can you give the guy a call? So I called him and I said, hey, you're not going to get an appraisal that's going to get you what you're looking for. I said, but can you explain to me? Tell me what's going on with you. Why are you trying to get $25,000 off of your home? And I shut up. And he told me, he said, Rusty, he said, a couple of years ago, a real tragedy happened in my life. My 14-year-old daughter was in a vehicle as a passenger, and there was an automobile accident, and she's paralyzed to her neck. And so my wife divorced me over it. We blamed each other, and I scaled down from my home to the manufactured home, and she has 24/7 care. He said, I'm one of the highest paid people in our little town here in Arkansas, a little community. And he said, I've been getting calls from collection agencies that said that I owe money to the doctors who saved my daughter's life. And what I want to do is borrow the money to pay them for saving my daughter's life. And I was bawling on the phone. I was
Oh,
like, wow, this is not really what I expected.
right.
So I tracked it down. I contacted the doctors, and the doctors said, no, this guy's the most upstanding person in our community. He gives his daughter, teenage daughter, 24/7 care. He does things in our community. He doesn't owe
Okay.
us any money. I said, well, for some reason, it's been turned over to collection agencies, and they're harassing him, and he wants to
Sure.
pay because you saved his daughter's life.
Right.
And they said, he doesn't owe us. I said, give it to me in writing. So I contacted the collection agencies and I told them, look, this is how it's going to work. You're going to, you're going to mark that debt paid. You're going to remove it from his credit report, or I'm going to put a team of lawyers on you that you'll never forget. You'll never collect another penny from anybody the rest of your lives. And they took care of it. And I reached back out to him. I said, hey, listen, you don't owe me anything. Doctor said you overpaid him. Take care of your daughter, and God bless you, and get on with your life. And he said, what do I owe you? I said, you don't owe me anything, but I'm going to tell you a story, because I want people to know when a person goes out to do something, there's a reason for it. Their kids could be getting bullied at that school. They
Yes.
they could be in a rental place where you got a landlord going through their stuff. You don't know what it is until you find out. And if you get personable, then maybe you'll work a little bit harder to try to help them in the proper way, versus they're just a statistic. And can I get them the loan, or I can't get them the loan? How much money can I make off of them? And how much can you can't? But they
Yep.
play on your happiness, Melissa, because they're happy to know if they can get something, and they don't care what the cost. And you can't give up, you can't get happiness at any cost that's out there, because that still won't make you happy.
It's
It
an
just won't.
external, right? It's an external stimulant. It's not an internal energy. That's
It,
how I
it,
look at it, definitely.
it's just
And
it's just not, and
well,
it's
that was
tough.
both a awful story and a wonderful story. And, the compassion that you felt and you followed through with them. Um, Good for you. How about, let's say, where would you point someone if you have, I have plenty of people always asking, like, I'd really like to do better with my finances. I just like to shore them up or know where I'm at. What would be the best first step for somebody to that would want to look into organizing and improving their credit and finances? What would be a good first step?
Well, the first step is you got to evaluate yourself. Nobody likes to do a budget. Nobody wants to write down, this is what I bring home,
Right,
this is what my expenses are, and this is what I can allow, this much for this for this for this.
right.
And you've got to start there. You've got to start with understanding money. Never spend more than you make. You cannot borrow yourself rich. You can't do that. And this is a saying my grandfather told me, it's never how much money you make, it's what you do with your money that counts.
Yes.
And so these people that just, you're never going to be happy, no matter how much you make, no matter what you do. But if you can scale it, you can still be happy. And then once you've got an idea of how to take care of your money, then you can work at establishing credit if you've never established credit, or if you're trying to reestablish credit.
Yes, right.
Unfortunately, sometimes when people start to reestablish credit, they get all excited. And when somebody says, yeah, I'm going to give you credit, then you go, okay. And they get excited and you max it all out again. You go, whoa, that's what put me in this position to start with. I'll give you an example. I just looked at a credit file where the person's score was in the low to mid 500s, trying to buy a house. Now, I don't know if they're real serious about trying to buy a house, because I haven't spoken to them. I
Mhm.
can only look on paper.
Okay.
So I saw on paper where they had a few revolving credit cards, but the majority of their point deductions was on inquiries, having people pull their credit. So I get to see who pulled their credit. It was Lamborghini, it was Ferrari, it was Mercedes, even Nissan. They had a variety of really expensive automobiles. So I'm thinking this person's gone out to all these car lots over the last 2 years and he's test driving cars, taking selfies, putting them on the
Right.
internet. Look at me in this Ferrari. Look at me in this Lamborghini with no resources to buy at all, but just ripping the credit. So now I'm thinking they've gotten engaged with a real estate agent and now they're going looking at $4 and $5 million mansions that they can't buy just so they can take a picture. I'm with the real estate guy and
Oh,
I'm in here. I
oh,
think this guy's playing everybody.
yes.
And he's doing that. So you get people like that, but then you get the people that didn't know if you miss a $15 credit card payment, it can drop your score 40 or 50 points, and it could take a year or more to recover. Or people that run into trouble, and I take it to like when you're a little kid and you're scared of the boogeyman and you put the cover over your head and you think the bad, it's going to go away, but they're still there. And
Yeah,
and
God dang
so
it.
yeah, so if you don't contact the creditor and say, "Hey, Melissa, I got this going on, and I just wanted you to be aware of it, and I'm going to be a few days late, but I'm going to pay you. Don't ding me for a late pay and hurt my credit." And they won't. They won't. They're going to be okay. We got you. You've been a good, borrower from us, and
Yes,
and
yeah,
we understand. Things happen, especially in the times that we've gone through. You mentioned COVID. So credit and finance today is not the same that it was, 30 years ago. It wasn't
absolutely.
the same as it was 50 years ago. It wasn't the same there. So you've got to
But
deal with
it's,
what's going on today.
and it seems like from all of those examples that communications still works. I mean, if I were to reach out, like you just said, and call and say, really, I need a week. Don't put it late. And I didn't realize that they would not. Like I knew they'd make payment arrangements, but I still thought maybe they'd drop it on the, late column, so to speak. But you're saying that a lot of times they will not. They will honor the payment arrangement I make and consider it on time payment.
They will. And then the people that have run into trouble because they didn't know, they got overextended, they got sick, they got anything that happens in their
Yeah,
life
yeah.
where their credit goes, then they go out and they reach out to credit repair companies. And credit repair companies, there's a lot of good individuals that have companies that still not going to help you. And so they go in and they challenge the negative items that are on the credit
Hmm.
instead of trying to work out a deal with you and that creditor. Things have gotten better for you. Obviously, you're out trying to buy a house. And
Yes.
how can you reinvest your money to pay the debt that you did have in negotiation versus disputing it? Because what happens when you dispute it, whether you're agreeing to it or not, the credit repair company sends it to you, then it goes onto your credit report on that trade line and it says consumer disputes the account. Now what happens when you do that, the credit score temporarily goes up because the scoring algorithms don't count
Okay.
that
Yeah.
trade line.
Right.
But the moment you go to get a home loan, you have to have that language removed. So then you've got to pay somebody to get that language off. You paid somebody that put it on there for you.
Yeah.
You kept paying them because you had the illusion that your scores went up
Yes.
when they really didn't go up. And then when you then have to contact the creditor and say, "Hi, it's Rusty. I know I used somebody to dispute that I didn't owe you that $2,800. Well, I need a letter that says that I do owe you that $2,800." And then they go, "Great, Rusty, when are you going to pay us? It's been 3 years." And so, so now you got to do it, but then your credit score goes down,
Of
and
course.
now you no
Yeah.
longer qualify even close to getting finance for the home. but you're having to keep paying all this extra stuff. And that's what's going on in the industry today, because the bureaus and the creditors and finance companies, nobody's working together in unity
I would agree with that.
at all in order to help the consumer. So if
Right.
everybody worked accordingly and accordingly to the way that God would want us to operate and run, God didn't say you
For our
can't have a
hearts.
business. You got to be able to run it accordingly if it's beneficial for somebody. But if it's only beneficial for yourself, those people will never be satisfied with the amount of money that they make from all of these different industries that are tied up with credit and finance.
And it is an overwhelming area. Just from this few minutes that we've been talking, if a person is not educated in that, you'd have to go down a rabbit hole to keep investigating this. Is this better for me, or is this? And then maybe still not know. Let's talk about some of the, was it ScoreNavigator?
ScoreNavigator.
And right. And then the Credlogix. Are these some of the things that help people discern a better way to handle their
Yes, so
credit?
Credlogix is my software company that does the coding, the analytics, the algorithms
Yeah.
for the ScoreNavigator product.
Okay.
So ScoreNavigator is a direct to consumer. So if a consumer is looking to find out how they can manage their money, manage their credit,
Mhm.
have educational pieces, we run a behavioral program behind the scenes. So we know what your tendencies are and what we have to do to slowly work you over to here, because each individual works at their own pace at what in their own stuff. But if you don't manage your credit, you'll never have any money. And if you don't manage your money, your credit's going to be shot because you're going to be paying higher rates. So
Yes.
you've got to
Yes.
be real careful. And it goes back to the same thing. We all want happiness, but at what cost? And then when it hits you, and then when things go bad, then couples fight, they argue, they start drinking more, they start doing drugs, things start splitting up. And then when they split up, it trickles down to the children that are involved.
Yes.
Now
Yes.
they're split up. Now they're socially going to different schools. They're no longer able to maintain in that place. They're getting bullied, and teen suicide is up. Melissa, back in the day, I mean, I'm 66 years old, and back in the day, the number one reason for divorce was infidelity, adultery. But today in society, yeah, I went to the grocery store today. I picked up some bread, eggs, had an affair, came home, and life went on. And so it's no longer the number one reason for divorce. It's credit and finance.
Mhm.
And that's
Absolutely.
because nobody wants to admit, and it becomes the blame game. And the blame game's been going on since the beginning of time with Adam and Eve. They
Sure did.
God, you're the one
Right.
that brought Eve in here to me, and he says, well, you're the one that left me out here. And this happened. And the blame game started right there. And
So
we're
she
so
did.
good at blaming everybody for our own downfall, but we're
Yes.
so quick to pat ourselves on the back and take all the credit for all the good things that go on instead of giving it to God. So we're not worthy of anything. And so you've got to take responsibility. And that's what I tried to teach them. Look in the mirror. Your credit's the way it is, your money's the way it is, because it's about you. It's not about your family. Your family didn't want the big house, the fancy car. You wanted it. And you were willing to do whatever it took for you, because all people do is care about themselves and what can make them happy. Doesn't make them a bad person, but we
I
get up and we're not thinking about the other person. We're thinking about how I get through the day. And that's
sure,
that's
and
the reason for it all.
I can see that. I know you are a very busy man, husband, father, grandfather, author, right? Creator, disruptor. I got a whole bunch for you.
Oh yeah, I'm a
Innovator.
disruptor.
Oh, just, hey, you take an industry and you move it around, and do something better. That's the thing. You're doing something better with it. And a game-changing entrepreneur. The tools that you have are absolutely fabulous. Let's give the audience like a specific example of how the tools and education that you've created can make a difference. For example, like how would you help someone prepare for a mortgage loan? Can we use that as an example using your tools and the differences with and without it?
Absolutely. So it, before you go out and apply for a mortgage, before you even go look at a house, do not look at a house before you secure your financing.
Why?
Because if not, you see something that's really might be out of your range, and
Uh-huh.
you're so dead set on getting that, you can't get it out of your mind.
Hmm.
And then you've showed it to your kids and they're like, wow, I finally get my own room.
Yes.
And you just can't do that. So you got to get a copy of your credit report. There's ways to get free credit reports. And that doesn't necessarily mean people that are in the industry. You can get through annualcreditreports.com. I believe you can still get a free copy of your report.
Uh-huh.
You don't need a score. People put a lot of emphasis on the score, but there's
Yes.
over 50 different scoring algorithms. So you may get this type of a score and you get excited and it's like, wow, this is a great score. And then you go over and you get finance and that scores 40 points lower
Yes.
than the other. So, good news is coming into 2025, there'll be some better scoring algorithms for the mortgage industry. And so some of them are going to be a little bit more favorable,
Mm.
and the choices that the lender will have can actually help that consumer when they start going out. But you got to police the credit data. So you got to look at what's being reported, because studies show that 79% of all credit reports contain errors. I've analyzed over
Yes.
30 million credit reports, and I can tell you 100% of them contain errors, because something's not being reported correctly, or it's not being reported timely.
Oh,
For
sure.
instance, you pay on your credit card bill by the due date, but the due date is after the report date, so you have to wait another 3 or 4 weeks before it actually lowers your balance to high credit ratio. But then you have your credit pulled on a certain date where all of your credit's not all updated,
Gotcha.
and you may be 3 or 4 points off for prime financing, but you fit okay for financing. Now, there are a lot of good lenders and good CRAs that are out there, the credit reporting agencies or the subsidiaries. They've been in it for 30 years or so.
Yeah.
They got big hearts, and they will point out and tell you, take care of this, and then I can get you a better rate.
I see.
So they're not all bad, money hungry people, but those people are in every industry. And so there's a lot more good in the industry than bad. Some are very educated on it and some aren't. So got to look at
Mm-hmm.
your credit report. And when
Right.
you look at your credit report, the first thing people look at is if there's any negative stuff there. But positive credit or lack of positive credit has as much or more impact on that score than negative credit. And most of the errors that are going to hurt you is in that positive credit. So you got to look at what you have there. And
Okay.
then you got to see what your balance to high credit ratios are. And
Yes.
then you've got to understand in different score ranges what your utilization is. It's a science. You got to understand, if I have this type of score, I'm not going to get as much credit for having better credit or better balances than a person who has a higher score to recover. But if you have a higher score and people that walk around, hitting their chest,
Right.
I got a 780 score, their one mistake of being a 680 score because they can make one mistake.
Oh, I see what you mean.
And when you
Yes.
have a higher score and everything's right, you drive in, everything's good,
Feeling good.
I'm doing good. And then you run over that nail on the highway and it rips your car to shreds and you forgot to make your insurance payment and you are in trouble. And so the damage to that person in a credit scoring algorithm is much greater than a person with a 580 score who hits a bus. It's just that's how it equals life out.
This is like, is this a foreign language? Did we slip into
It absolutely is,
Oh my
and people
goodness.
say, Rusty, you know a lot about credit. I'm not an expert, but that's what I do. I've worked in the credit industry before credit scoring. I can't change a light bulb. I can't fix anything. I can't do any of that stuff. But I stay focused on this because I remember being a kid in the projects and then getting out of the projects and finally getting my own room. I had one older sister,
Oh wow.
and so we shared a room for most of my younger life. And then, dang it, we got a house to move into, and I got my own room when I was a teenager, and so was she. So her sleepovers, I was like, wait a minute, I used to share a room with Penny. How come I can't do that now? You know, yeah, no, that ain't gonna happen. Not in our house. And so, yeah, but I remember how it was when I got my first room. Now, did I take care of that room, keep it clean, do all the things I was supposed to do? Heck no. Heck no. And that's what people do in life. They get what they
Yes.
want. It's not really what they want. It doesn't give them complete happiness and they trash it because they're following that instead of the Lord.
Man, I know these again, all of these external things are just, we bought into them because that's what how we were taught. But somewhere in our adult lives, you've talked about it several times already, but to stop and feel your own heart and to follow that and let that be the strongest um, voice to make decisions from. I'm practicing. When I was raising my kids, I was very distracted, and even though I've always had faith, I've always had beautiful understanding of my relationship with God, but I fell right into the regular societal norms. Too much work, buying too many things. One of the things when you were I wanted to touch on when you were talking before is that I know that me and other people I've talked to are afraid of about what other people think. So if we didn't have, a good enough car or the super cool barbecue or the brand new couch, it was hard. People talked about buying stuff all the time in our work environment, and that's what they gauged each other on. And I never really cared for that, but I tried to keep up. And for me, it was not a good situation. I do better when I'm, rounding up chickens and ducks and, stuff like that, putting on my galoshes and maybe going to clean the horse stall. I just,
Simplicity. Yeah.
yeah,
Simplicity instead of, just chasing stuff. If
just
we
chasing.
chased eternity and life with God versus all the little sparkly things that come in front of us
Yes,
in
I
our
know.
life, we get off course. And all of those things could be taken away in a moment, in a split second. It's gone. And that's not going to happen if
Then
your
what?
focus
Right.
is on God and what you're doing, because that's the goal. When I laid in that hospital, I knew they weren't going to help me, Melissa. I knew it. I was kind. I saw the nurses' faces.
Oh,
They
wow.
were they were dealing with people that were going to die in that hospital, and they were being told they had to do this, do that by the medical people, and they were just so sick to death of it. And when they came to see me in the room to keep pricking my fingers and doing all of this stuff, they'd ask me what I want. I said, I don't want anything. I don't need anything. I said, I know I'm getting worse because there's no medicine. There's nothing, and I'm buying my time, but I finally don't have any noise. I don't have the business bothering me. I don't have all of these other things bothering me. I couldn't see my family. My sister was across the hall from me. I couldn't see her. My dad was 5 rooms down. I couldn't see him. I couldn't talk to him, but I could talk to my sister. And we talked. We were very tight growing up. We were like no tomorrow, brother and sister. When she got up, she lived here. We both took care of my dad. My mom had passed 7 years before that, and we both took care with my wife and children, my father. But when I was laying there having alone time with God, I was ready to go. And people say, well, that's kind of foolish and selfish. And I'm like, no, because I've accomplished more than what I could have ever thought to in my lifetime. And it doesn't have to do with money. It just has to do with, I wanted to grow up, get out of the projects and travel the world. I wasn't going to get married. I wasn't going to have children. My sister wanted to get married and have children. And she didn't care about travel. She did exactly what she wanted to do. I traveled the world. I did whatever I wanted to do. And then I wound up with more children than her. And so that's just how life goes. But
my goodness.
When I spoke with God and God spoke to me, I said, everything that's gone into my life that's gone wrong, it's because of me. I knew how to look in the mirror. And so I have nothing to blame you for. When things are going good, Melissa, people don't have a relationship with God. When they go bad, either they ask for help or they blame God. They blame God for their mistakes of things that go on. And so I told God, I have nothing to bargain with you. I can't sit here and say, well, I'll be a better person because, I probably won't. I can't say I'm going to do this if you're going to do, if you do this for me.
Right.
And things were getting worse. And all God kept telling me was to give him 100%. That's all I heard. Now, give him 100%. Give him 100%. Now, I didn't understand until after I got out of the hospital almost a year. It wasn't just because nobody can give him 100%. Jesus could give him 100%. None of us can give God 100%. The message was, give more of him than myself. So just give me everything that you got. And so when the doctor came in with those nurses and they told me I was going to die, I had a 0% chance. I said goodbye to my family. I called my lawyer. I said, I need you to fly in and unplug me. They're saying if I get on a ventilator, I have a 10% chance to make it. Now, what I thought in my mind was somebody in ICU's got to die for me to go down there to get on this ventilator.
Oh, geez.
I'm like, they had to, Melissa, they had to. The place was packed with people on life support. So they're telling me if I don't get down there, I'm going to die in the room. And so I said, okay, I'll do it. But then when I laid there, I said, somebody's got to die. They're going to unplug somebody. They're going to do something to give me that bed so they can make the money. And so when I got down there, 5 hours later, I went into a room that somebody had just died in. And you could feel death all in that ICU when you were in there. It was demonic. It was terrible. And I laid there and the doctor came in. They're going to put a PICC line in you. We're going to do this. We're going to sedate you. We're going to put you on the ventilator and you're going to be dead because you got your lawyer flying in to unplug you. So my wife or children wouldn't have to do it. I didn't want that burden on them. And I looked over to the doctor and I said, I want you to take that mask off. And he said, why? I said, because I want to see the face of the man that's going to kill me tonight.
It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I'm a straightforward guy. I'm from the Bronx. And I want people to be straightforward with me.
Yeah.
And he got mad and he left. And those words came out to make him upset. God gave me those words and they got him upset so he wouldn't have a problem when I told him when he came back, I'm not getting on the ventilator. and he's going to say, great, he'll die in pain. I'll fix him, and he'll just die tonight anyways, and he'll deal with the pain because I'm in charge of all of this.
Right?